Hey, my name's Maria,
And I'm John.
and we've decided to share our story with finding out that our little man, I'm 21 weeks pregnant, has Down syndrome. So, just our Down syndrome diagnosis story and our journey. The reason we want to share is because when we first got our diagnosis, one of the first things we did was just go online and look up videos and just other people's accounts who have walked this journey. The lucky few is the hashtag that's used, which is really cool. And it honestly just helped give us hope and just have a better understanding of what to expect and what our journey was going to look like. Because Google is not the best place to go when you first get a diagnosis, and there's a lot of stuff on there that's just numbers and stats, and it doesn't give you a real sense of what life will be like. And so we're obviously still at the beginning of our journey, but through getting to watch and just see other people's journeys, we've decided that we'd like to share ours as well. So going back to like the beginning of our pregnancy, we first found out we were expecting the same weekend we moved into a new house, which has a whole story in it of itself.
Yeah, so we just moved from our place in Grand Rapids, Michigan, all the way out to a small town in Potsdam, New York. Like you said, we bought a house. I found a new job out here. The whole new kind of life situation for us both as we kind of readjust to our new place and new atmospheres.
Yeah, so we found out, we were super excited. We told our families right away. It was really hard not to just tell the whole world right away. And then we started getting connected with a midwife in town, and the first couple appointments went really well. We got to hear baby's heartbeat.
Yeah, that was really cool.
John wasn't allowed in like the just checkup appointments with me, but those went well. Nothing was showing up on the ultrasound or anything at the beginning. And then in one of those just like normal monthly check-in appointments, my midwife started asking me about genetic testing.
And I wasn't there, right?
Yeah, we hadn't really talked about it. I didn't realize it was a question that was going to be asked at that point, so we hadn't sat down and talked about it. And John wasn't there, and so I kind of asked her, well, is it normal? Like, do most people get it? And she said that they do. Most people normally do. And so I was like, okay, well, sure. We'll get the genetic testing.
Because also on top of that, too, we wanted to find out the gender of our kid.
Yes, and that was the way to find out early. I didn't quite know that at that point, but we decided to just go with it and see what was happening. So she gave me some information to just check with our insurance provider and see what was covered and what wasn't. And so we did that. We reached out to the insurance guy and talked to him and found out that because I was not classified as high risk for anything, like I'm 26, John's 27, we're young, we don't have any history of anything, I wasn't classified as high risk, and so insurance wasn't going to cover the test. And so then it became, do we want to pay out of pocket for this test? And we decided we did want to, because we wanted to know the gender. Like, this was all just solely about finding out the gender of the baby, because we didn't want to wait until the ultrasound around 20 weeks to find out. So we decided to do it. We wanted to know the gender. So we got the blood work done. However, in the middle of this, John actually lost his job that he got when we moved here. And so we ended up spending some time in Canada with my family.
You had a forced vacation.
Yeah.
That allowed us to go see your parents for a while.
Yeah, so it was nice. We were up there with them, and I got a call from my midwife saying that my blood work didn't actually get to the testing place in time to be tested. And so in the middle of COVID and stuff, it's hard to cross the border and back and forth. So we actually came back, got the blood work done all over again, and then went back to Canada again. So at this point, it had been over 2 weeks, I think, since we first got that initial blood work, because it takes about 10 days for it to come back. So we waited 10 days, found out it didn't work, so we came back and but 2, I think almost 3 weeks.
It's a lot of waiting.
Just waiting and just anticipating the call to find out what the gender was. And so we're up in Canada and we finally got the phone call. And I answered the phone and the midwife asked me if I was at home. And I was like, yeah, I'm at home. Well, I was like, well, I'm actually with my parents, but I'm at a home. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
you were
not at work.
sitting on the windowsill and I was on the couch.
Yeah.
So I heard you had a phone call, but I didn't hear what the conversation was.
Yeah, I was just in my ear because there were people around, and there was just so much anticipation to find out what the gender was. And so she's like, well, you wanted to know the gender, right? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, okay, well, I'll start by telling you it's a boy. And then she said, but it did show up positive for trisomy 21, which is Down syndrome. And in that moment, like, my heart just, like, I could feel it pounding in my chest, because I just wasn't, there was no part of any of this where I was, like, trying to find out if something genetically was going to show up. It was all just for the gender. And so it wasn't even a thought in my mind that something could show up. So then I ended up telling John, and a little while later we told my family,
we were with your family.
And then his family, all that day. And that was definitely, I think, the hardest day in this whole process, at least for me. Just because it wasn't something I expected, and right at the beginning I had all of these fears and thoughts, which within like a day or two of just researching and watching people's stories, I found out a lot of my fears like weren't even accurate, and a lot of my initial assumptions weren't true, but just due to I had never had a close relationship with anyone with Down syndrome before, and so it was all new, and I had a lot of false assumptions. And so that was really scary at first. But one of the first things we did that day and following was start to watch videos. There's one video called Dear Future Mom, I think it is.
I think so.
Something like that. But it's a bunch of children with Down syndrome just talking to their moms, or to a future mom of a child with Down syndrome, and just what to expect and not to worry. And that was a really cool video. We watched a bunch of other videos. I right away started going on Instagram and just finding other moms who were sharing their journey, and started connecting with them. And within like the first even 24 hours, I feel like there was just a much greater sense of peace washing over me, that was like just with where our journey was heading and what our life would look like. Yeah,
because you actually had some conversations, I believe, with some parents and family who were going through our similar situation that we have been going through. And yeah, it's nice to kind of hear their stories. And that's kind of the main reason why we're trying to make this video, is that people can hear our story and feel a little more encouraged.
Yeah. So I actually reached out to, like he said, a couple moms on Instagram and Facebook, and started connecting, and I had some phone calls, and it was actually so cool to just hear from other moms and just have real conversations with people actually going through it, rather than just like searching statistics on the internet. So along with that, there's a couple other things I just want to mention if you're going through this journey, some resources to check out. One is an organization called Jack's Basket, as well as an organization called Love That Surpasses. Both of those are really cool resources that when you go and you put in your information, they'll send you a little gift with some resources and just some fun stuff, and just celebrate your baby with you. As well as the Down Syndrome Diagnostic Network has a bunch of Facebook groups. And so I joined one for expecting moms. There is one for dads as well, which you should join. You're just not on Facebook as much. But it's super helpful. Just other moms, other people who have been through it, and you just get to ask questions and chat with each other, and super, super helpful. After getting that call, though, we had some more decisions to make. So the blood work genetic test is not a diagnosis. It's kind of a screening. And so our positive results were positive for trisomy 21 with a 9 out of 10 likelihood that that was an accurate screening, an accurate
Something like that,
result. And so we had decisions to make with what we were going to do next. So some people choose to wait. And sometimes markers start showing up on ultrasounds further down the line. So we could have waited and gotten like a more detailed ultrasound around 20 weeks.
20 weeks, yeah.
But we were still pretty early in pregnancy at this point. I forget how many weeks I was. But it would have been a long wait to wait, and that even if things do show up on an ultrasound later on, it's not a diagnosis. It's just more markers and more things that are showing you that it's likely. And so our other option was to do an amniocentesis, which is where they go into the mother's belly and into the
Amniotic
fluid, and they pull some amniotic fluid from the uterus and they test that genetically. And so they test the baby's genes. There are risks that come with the amnio, and so it's a personal decision what you want to do, but we decided to do it just so that we could know for sure moving forward and just be able to share with friends and family in a way that was, this is what's happening, not this could be what's happening, but maybe not, and have people kind of in that in between. So we decided to do it. For us, it meant going to a different hospital because we're in a really small town. And so we went, and the procedure itself is actually very short. They don't do anything to numb you or anything because they say that needle is bigger than the actual needle that they use. And so they just go in, it's a little poke and then a little bit of cramping, and then they pull what they need to, and it's short and simple. You do have to kind of just chill out for the next day or two just to make sure everything heals properly. But we did that, and then we waited to get the results.
So we waited for the results. With the amnio test, there's two results you get. You get the FISH results, which are like the quick rapid response results, which that kind of gives you a yes or no on Down syndrome. And then you wait 2 weeks for the full results, which kind of give you more detailed analysis of the genetic genes and kind of what type of Down syndrome it is. So one thing we've learned is that there's 3 types of Down syndrome. There's the normal kind of Down syndrome that you hear a lot about, and then there's translocation Down syndrome and mosaic Down syndrome. And so the detail gives you a more idea of which one of those it is, and gives you a better idea of kind of what it is from there. And so we learned from the FISH results that our kid did have Down syndrome, which with our 9 out of 10% with our first genetic test, we were kind of not surprised by those results.
And we were a lot more at peace this time finding that out for sure, just because we had the time to process a lot of the emotions and just mentally kind of just be ready for that. And so it was almost like a relief, at least for me, to just know and be able to move forward, preparing in the right way, learning whatever I can to like be the best parents we can be. And so for me, those results were more of a relief, and just calmed a lot of like all of the thoughts just swirling around in my head. So we got those quick results, and then
we had to wait 2 weeks to figure out what the actual results were. And so at the end of those 2 weeks, we got a call from our doctor, if you remember that.
Yeah, it's a whole nother story, because we got a call and he left a message on my phone at the end of the day, like 20 minutes left in the day of his work day, and said that there were some, I think he used the word abnormal or a word similar to that, results that he wanted to talk to us about.
Yep.
And it sent me spinning. Like, I was just a mess because we had already confirmed that he had Down syndrome. And as far as I knew, the only thing that showed up, like, was just what type. And I didn't think that was a big deal. And so, like, for him to say that there was some sort of abnormal results that, like, he hadn't seen before or whatever, like, I was a mess.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a long night.
Because we couldn't get a hold of him. And I tried everything. And the next morning I tried from like 8 a.m. to like 10 a.m. before we finally got connected with him. I tried every way possible. That was a rough.
Yeah, aside from driving there.
Yeah, aside from driving the 3 hours to the hospital. Tried pretty much everything we could to get a hold of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we finally did get a hold of him. And he told us that... Caden, that's our little guy's name, has translocation Down syndrome, which honestly, for me, like, all of my crazy emotions, like, no big deal. It's just which type of Down syndrome. But he, I guess, hadn't seen that before other than just, like, reading about it. So he has the 21-21 translocation Down syndrome. So normally... with Down syndrome, there's 3 copies of the 21st chromosome. But with Caden, 2 are attached to each other, and then there's a 3rd. And so it's like 2 of the 21 chromosomes are connected, and then there's 1 more. So there's a total of 3, but it's 2 of them are actually connected to each other. So translocation Down syndrome is actually the one type of Down syndrome that can be genetic. And I believe it's only like 3% of cases of Down syndrome are translocation Down syndrome. So there is a chance that this Caden's Down syndrome was caused genetically. So one of the next steps for us is actually to go get our genetic testing done to see if either of us are carriers. And if we are, that's like a whole nother realm of things that we'll enter into and just figuring out what that looks like. But there's also a good chance that it just happened. Even though it can be genetic, it doesn't always mean that it is.
Yeah, the odds of it being our genetics is very, very low. However, our circumstances, our odds are very, very low. So.
Yeah. The chances of us having a child with Down syndrome to begin with were very, very low. So, I don't know. Chances in my likelihoods are kind of all out of whack. But yeah. So we found out he does have translocation Down syndrome. Next step is for us to get our blood work done. And then on top of that, we have another appointment this coming week, actually, with a detailed ultrasound and a fetal echocardiogram. Often children with Down syndrome can't have heart defects, I believe is the right word.
Yeah, a lot of Down syndrome kids have health issues.
Yeah, kids with Down syndrome.
Kids with Down syndrome have health issues, and one of them is heart issues is a very common one. So getting a fetal echocardiogram to kind of make sure the heart is where it should be and what it is, or to see if there is anything.
Any holes or anything. So, and even if there are, they might not show up. But that is our next step, is to get his heart checked and just do a detailed ultrasound, make sure. We might see some soft markers. Up till now we haven't, but that's a possibility, and just hopefully learning more. So yeah, that's the first chunk of our story. We're hoping to keep kind of sharing this journey as it unfolds and as we learn more, and we're really excited. I love that the term "the lucky few" has been coined for families who have people with Down syndrome in their family, because it's true. Like, we get to be the lucky few, and not everybody gets that opportunity. And so Caden's going to teach us a lot, and we are really excited for him to get here. Can't believe we're already over halfway.
It's crazy.
Through pregnancy. So
it's coming soon. Well,
soonish. A couple months away. But yeah. So thanks for watching the beginning of our story. I hope this is helpful. For me, one huge thing when I found out that Caden had Down syndrome was connecting with other moms So if anybody is watching this and you recently got a prenatal diagnosis, feel free to reach out. We'd love to connect and just share our journey and what we've learned and what's been helpful and what hasn't been. And so yeah, thanks for watching.